This is Yahya John Moore, and this is Bilaal, Theophilus, I don't know if I'm saying it right, Wilson. And they are my dear friends, and these two very special men have been exonerated and served decades in prison. Before I begin, I'm going to talk to you, read a quote that means a lot to me from Ruth Bader Ginsburg. Whatever you choose to do, leave tracks. And that means don't do just for yourself, because in the end, it's not going to be fully satisfying. I think you will want to leave the world a little better for your having lived. And there's no satisfaction that a person can gain from just what people call turning over a buck that's equal to the satisfaction that you get from knowing that you have made another's life, your community, a little better for your effort. The parsha is called Lech Lecha, which Rebecca also told you means go forth. It means go unto you. And it's found in Genesis, and it tells the story about Abraham's spiritual journey of self-discovery. And these words that are part of the portion describe how I have felt and how I feel in my journey as an advocate for human beings who are impacted by our criminal justice system. I have a sense when I connect with people, when I listen to them, when I care, when I argue on behalf of my clients in court and in my briefs, I sense that I am doing God's work, and I receive immense pleasure from the words of gratitude that I hear from my clients. There are many passages in our Jewish text that talk about justice. And one of them is from Isaiah, which resonates with me. Learn to do good, devote yourself to justice, aid the wronged, uphold the rights of the orphan, and defend the cause of the widow, which is just what I've said about helping the underserved, the people who can't have a voice, and to be their advocate and lift them up and care about them. There's a Jewish rabbi speaker she speaks on justice, and she's a leader in the Jewish justice community. Her name is Rabbi Sharon Brous, and she says, the call to awaken to the image of God, to the dignity of every person, has been the driving force of my religious life, the very heart of my faith. And she says, what would it mean to build a society in which every person is treated as an image of the divine? How would this affect our relationships with our neighbors, our coworkers? And she refers to the stranger lying beneath the stained blankets and trash outside Starbucks. And I would say when I walk into a prison and see my clients or people that are suffering. And I look at them as, and people don't do this, but I look at them as human beings. I look inside their hearts. Our first guest is Bilaal Wilson, to my far left. And I'm going to give just a little bit of an introduction. So Bilaal, I met Bilaal in the summer of 23. He was incarcerated for 28 years for a crime he didn't commit. It was a triple homicide he was accused of in Philadelphia and convicted of. Since Bilaal has been out, he has started a foundation, and the foundation is called Biddle Foundation, with other fellow, such as Yahya. And they are in this foundation, they're trying to help youth so that they will keep them, supported out of prison, making positive choices and positive role models. And they're also doing trying to help men and women like themselves who are wrongfully convicted and incarcerated. So that is what Bilaal is doing. And Yahya, similarly, they met. Did you meet each other in the prison?
Yes.
You met each other at Phoenix and Graterford, correct?
Yes.
And Yahya was in Phoenix and Graterford for 27 years for a robbery homicide he did not commit. He was only released 16 months ago. He's working for the Innocence Project, and I know that gives him a lot of satisfaction. He's a paralegal. And in his particular case, he had a trial in front of a judge, and the only evidence against him was his co-defendant, who got a deal to get a lighter sentence to testify against Yahya. And there was no other evidence because his attorney did not do very much investigating it all with potential witnesses, and the Commonwealth failed to turn over evidence about alternative suspects. So he served 27 years. In the last 16 months, he was able to get a wonderful position at the Innocence Project and doing some very good work. And also, he also studied the law with other people in the prison, and he had the services of the Abolitionist Law Center, is that correct? To help him to be his lawyer and advocate for him. And because of what they found in his file and the lack of evidence and prosecutorial misconduct, he was able to be freed 16 months ago. What I like to do and what I'm doing tonight is trying to create awareness. That's like the first step. And so people can understand what goes on in the system and why I feel, and many people feel, that it's broken. I do civil rights, and a lot of the civil rights are about people in a prison who, for example, get horrific medical treatment, horrific delays, causing a lot of pain. I have a client who can't walk. He has a lot of neurological conditions. They won't give him ADA accommodations. They won't give him a wheelchair. They won't give him a walker. They won't give him a handicap cell. I have to keep arguing and advocating. They won't give him a handicap van. They threw him on the floor. And so we filed a lawsuit. But unfortunately, again, I keep advocating and advocating. And even if I win the lawsuit, this poor man has been suffering, and it doesn't seem to change things. But the one thing I keep wanting to do is tell the stories, make people aware, go to our legislators, tell them this is not working, and tell them the human stories. I have a client who had a stroke in the prison right in front of the nurse, and they just told him to go back to his cell. It's another example. And he's got, on one side of his body, has no feeling, and he had to be in rehab for a lot of months. I have a client who was raped by his cellmate, and the guards, when they said, help, this is happening, they walked away and said, you guys handle it. The other thing I do with clients is similar to what these men went through, which is like a post-conviction. So I have a lot of clients, especially in Philadelphia, the reality is, and I was a DA back then in the 80s and 90s, 70s, where all that mattered to the prosecutors was a conviction.
Hello, everyone. My name is Yahya, and as Lori said, 16 months ago, I was released from prison after serving 27 years on a wrongful conviction. So in other words, I was in prison for a murder that I did not commit. So in that sense, reform to me had always been about policy, had always been about mandatory minimum sentences. See, I grew up in North Philadelphia, and at the time it was the poorest zip code section of the city. And I was raised in a dysfunctional household. And so what I mean by dysfunction is that from wee hours until wee hours in the morning, there was drinking, there was smoking, there was music playing, car playing, the whole party life. And because of it, I kind of like really didn't have a curfew. So in the daytime, I would hang out with guys my age, and we would play basketball and baseball and all the other sorts of sports, doing kid things. But at nighttime, I would hang with the older guys. And we would get high, we would go to parties, we would sell drugs, and we would get into a lot of trouble. So it wasn't long before my nightlife became my day life, and I began getting arrested. I was 13 years old when I went to my first juvenile placement. And from there, I continued down the path of looking for the answers in all the wrong places. And along that journey, I developed a particular type of personality. It was the type of personality that made it easy for the police to arrest me for a crime that I did not commit. And it was the type of personality that even though I was innocent, people that loved me and the people that knew me didn't even believe me. Imagine being innocent of a crime and no one believes you. It's the worst feeling in the world. So I get to sit to prison and I'm distraught. I don't know left from right, up or down. I don't even know how I'm going to get through it. And one of the most common questions that we may ask ourselves inside, one may ask themselves, is, how did I get here and how did this happen? And so this type of question makes one reflect. And in my reflection, it took me back to me looking for the answers in all the wrong places. And I was hurt. I was distraught again. I went through a number of feelings and emotions. And then I embarked on a journey for change. I'm telling y'all, I've done it all. I studied the law for 22 years. I embarked on a Villanova bachelor degree program. I was a personal trainer, a trauma-informed yoga instructor, a facilitator, restorative justice, alternative to violence, just listening. I was a tutor. I was on committees. You name it, I did it. For all intents and purposes, I was a model inmate. I changed my life and spent 27 years adhering to that good character. See, that's what reform is about. See, there really isn't any system that truly imposes upon us how we are to exhibit our humanity. The judges in my case didn't understand that. The lawyer that I had didn't understand that. The officers didn't understand that. See, our greatest test of humanity will arise when we are in positions of power and authority. These systems that are in place are ran and run by human beings, which means that they only going to be as just and as fair as we are. But alternatives do exist. We just have to struggle to connect and imagine ourselves as better and imagine a better world. We have to take responsibility step by step and day by day to change the small things that we can control and refuse to accept the larger things that appear out of control. You have to have a level of spirituality, right? You know, because you're sitting in prison and, you know, it's like, what is my life going to be about if I never get out of here? What will my life be about? Will it be meaningful or will I just wither away? You know, how will I feel about myself? Do anybody impose it upon me how I'm supposed to feel about myself? And so these are deep reflections that one may go through. As I mentioned, I've been in and out since I was 13. And each time I went in, I was tired. But I didn't understand how to stop it. I couldn't understand what was happening. It was this cycle of maybe I thought I could take the shortcuts, right? I'm looking for answers here and there, And I was really, each time, I imagine no one wants to be in prison or away from their family. No one. It's just, I did not know how to stop it. So after a number of times, I tried hard, and I finally realized in that reflection, and it was hard because it hurt. It hurts to realize that you may be the cause of your own destruction. I made up my mind. I'm no longer going to live my life like this. Whether I'm inside a prison or outside, I'm no longer going to live my life like this. I didn't like that no one believed me, that I was innocent. And that was the most, I had so much pride in my innocence. Because everything that I had ever been arrested for, I pled guilty because I probably had done some things. And I was so proud that I didn't do this at this time. It wasn't anything that anyone could do to take that pride away from me.
As Lori mentioned, my name is Theophilus Wilson. Everybody calls me Bilaal. And my story is a little different. In 1991, the police came to my mother's home and asked, to speak with me. And I was puzzled, and I was like, what's going on? So they was like, we want to talk to you about a particular person that I knew. And I said, okay, no problem. Not understanding that you as a youth, a juvenile, you shouldn't talk to the police without an attorney or your parents present. But they came, and they asked me about an individual that I knew. They took me down. Now, mind you, I had some running. I come from so-called hood, right? So I had some run-ins with the law, but I've never been incarcerated before, as a juvenile or as an adult. So a lot of this stuff was new for me on this level. So they take me down to homicide, and they start asking me questions about a particular homicide that occurred, and whether or not I knew if the individual that they were asking me about participated in it, or did I know him. So this was, I was very perplexed. I was trying to figure out, what's going on. So I told him, I said, I don't know nothing about that. I've never seen him do anything that you guys are saying. So after that, they said, well, we have someone saying that you participated in some things too. After they questioned me about that particular homicide, they said that someone said that I participated in 3 other homicides, right? So this is 4 now. So now I don't know what to do now. They say, well, listen, the district attorney wants to speak to you tomorrow. Would you come talk to him? I said, well, of course I would. Now, mind you, I'm a little confused. But okay. I got the feeling they could really let me go.
How old were you?
19.
19.
Right. So I don't know, right? Mind you, they're saying I did this stuff when I was 17. So I go down to the DA's office with my mother and my girlfriend at the time. So we go down, and long story short, I'm in there with one of the detectives from the previous day and the district attorney, the ADA, and they tell me outright, they said, we know you ain't got nothing to do with none of this, but we want you to help us get this so-and-so. He said, well, listen, we're going to charge you with corrupt organization, right? We're going to charge you guys with the RICO, right? We're going to do all this stuff to you. We have wiretaps of you, right? Talking about drugs and guns, right? So I said, well, for wiretaps from where, right? Come to find out, my uncle through marriage was a confidential informant for maybe about 10 years. And the family didn't know, and nobody knew. I said, well, one thing don't have nothing to do with the other. That don't have nothing to do with that, right? They said, yeah, we know, but we're gonna charge you with corrupt organization. We're gonna present that to the jury. The jury ain't gonna be able to determine, to be able to distinguish from this and that, right? So I said, okay. I said, all right. So I said, okay, we're gonna let you go. And they did exactly that. Charges with corrupt organization, let me go again. They came and arrested me 3-4 months later and charged me with 3 murders, the RICO, corrupt organization. And they came to my mother's house, surrounded the house, came and got me out, put me in a paddy wagon, and that was in 1992. I have to learn how this is happening, why this is happening, and I gotta straighten it out. I have to. They took me down a homicide, and they brought my mother in, and my mother's boyfriend at the time. And they was trying to get my mother and her boyfriend to get me to confess. I'm sitting there, and I can't believe, like, Mom, what are you talking about? I'm sitting there telling you, you know when I'm lying, you're my mother. I'm sitting there telling you that absolutely not. What are you talking about? They said, well, listen, you're not gonna help us? I said, absolutely not. Help you do what? Lie on myself and lie on some other people? That's not gonna happen. God just gave me some strength, man. And I said, I'm gonna turn jail into Yale, prison into Princeton, a big house into Harvard. I'm going down this law library. And like y'all said, I'm straightening this out, right? And that's all I did during my incarceration. Study. It was frustrating because I'm trying to learn this stuff without a professor, and I'm just learning. And I'm reading, and you got guys that have been locked up longer than me, they're trying to help me, but you can't trust nobody. Everybody in my neighborhood knew I played basketball, I liked the girls, and I wasn't a perfect individual, but I wasn't no murderer, right? So I had a lot of support from the neighborhood community. We go to trial in 1993, and they tried to get me the death penalty. And there's a lot of things going on in the trial that I'm saying is weird, because by now I know a little bit of law now, right? So I'm like, this is weird, right? We're arguing that the wiretap evidence, right, has nothing to do with something. The wiretap evidence happens a year after the alleged date of the crimes. So we're arguing, Your Honor, it doesn't go to the motive. Nobody has a time machine, right? It doesn't go to motive. It don't go to the common plan and scheme. It don't go to nothing. But they use the corrupt organization charge to bring in all types of evidence that has absolutely nothing to do with what you're charged with. And then we argue, the federal government never locked my client up. They never locked, because nothing never happened. They never seen no drugs, nothing never happened. It was some kids trying to buy some guns. They was using them for protection, right? So the judge wasn't trying to hear it. I takes the stand in my own defense, and we're prepared, we're prepared to be cross-examined. We're ready. And the judge doesn't allow my testimony. So I gets found guilty. I told the prosecutor, I told him I'll be back, right? And I said, man, so now I'm up there arguing for myself, I'm learning a little law mark, and I told the prosecutor, I said, I'll be back. He said, you hear that, Your Honor? He's threatening me. I said, I'm threatening you. I said, I'm not threatening you. I'm telling you, y'all made a mistake, and I'll be back. The jury came right back and said unanimously that my mitigating factors outweigh my aggravating factors. That's the criteria, the standard for death penalty cases, right? So the mitigating was I was never incarcerated before, my age, my character, right? And the people who's vouching for my character. And so my mitigating outweighed my aggravating. So I got found not guilty of the death penalty. So the other good thing that happened was the judge ran my sentences concurrent as opposed to consecutive, meaning there were one case. I kept my case alive for the 27 years. I litigated all the way up to the United States Supreme Court on my own, back and forth. Sometimes I had attorney, sometimes I didn't. And I was blessed as a result of the Miller versus Alabama, the juvenile issue. A law firm, Greenberg and Schwarg.
Oh, sure.
Yeah, my guys, they came on board for the juvenile issue, and they asked me, they said, "Will you?" I said, "I'm innocent, man." I said, when they falsely accused me, I was a juvenile, I want to get out, but I'm innocent. And they end up coming on board, representing me. So I had Greenberg and Schwarg, and because they didn't know a lot about PCRAs, they brought
PCRA is Post-Conviction Relief Act.
so they brought on a law firm, Phillips Black, and I had two law firms, and they were the first people to ask me what did I want to do with my case, because most lawyers don't listen, right? Lori listens, but a lot of lawyers don't listen to their clients. And what happened was, I told them I'm innocent, let's get the file. Larry Krasner, he was in office, just got in office, and he was giving up the file. And like Lori mentioned earlier, when we got the file, there was 22 boxes, 42,000 documents that they withheld from us. There's a plethora of new evidence that proved our innocence, right? Like unbelievable, and they know who did it, right? No physical evidence, no nothing. Withhold the evidence that shows that I shouldn't even be charging you. I should not be charging you. When they charge you, you got a right to discovery. Remember, the burden is on them. Right? Because they charge you. So the burden is on them. So when they do that, you have a right to discovery under the 14th Amendment.
And it's called a case called Brady.
Brady versus Moore. That's the violation of it, yeah. So they got to give you discovery. So because they charged you, they got to give everything to you that says you did it or didn't do it.
Exculpatory or inculpatory.
So why didn't they?
Because they're bad people. So what they did was they give you a discovery letter, right, as counsel, and it's supposed to have, everything that is against you or can help you. But they don't give what can help you. Prosecutorial misconduct. So they withhold that. So you go to trial.
But don't they swear an oath to?
Well, right? But the prosecutors take an oath that they have to seek justice and not merely convictions. But that's not what they do in a lot of cases. That stuff comes out later. They don't do that. So although they had this oath, they don't practice the oath. So that's how we got out.